probably get going. So I just wanted to take a moment and thank you all for coming. My name is Liz Kirchhoff, and I'm an adult services librarian at the Barrington Library. And before we get started today, I just wanted to kind of give you guys a couple of quick notes here. We would like to ask you to leave your microphones off, as well as your video. We have a presentation today that's got some sort of audio and visual aspects to it. So those tend to take a lot of bandwidth. So it tends to be like the less we have going on, the smoother it's going to all run. So because it's a case, there is a chat window you guys will see if you mouse over the bottom of the screen. And there's a little box that you can click into and ask your question. Or if you want to instead, I'm more than happy to unmute you all and turn your videos back on at the very end, and then you can just kind of ask your question in real life instead of on chat. But we'll kind of be watching both of those, so we would just really appreciate that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Esther Peters. She's the Associate Director for the Center for East European and Russian Eurasian Studies at the University of Chicago. I wrote it down because there was absolutely no way I was going to remember your title. I'm so sorry.
That's impressive, even with writing it down. It's a mouthful. So.
And she's going to tell you a little bit about their program and then about our speaker tonight.
Thank you so much, Liz. Yes, so just to make things easier, instead of saying the Center for East European and Russian Eurasian Studies, you can say CERES. That is our acronym, and that helps keep things together. But yes, as Liz mentioned, I am the Associate Director at the Center for East European and Russian Eurasian Studies, and tonight's lecture is part of a larger project that called the University of Chicago Global Lecture Series that was established not only with my center, but also with the Center for East Asian Studies and Middle Eastern Studies. We are the three Title VI National Resource Center area studies centers at the University of Chicago. And the goal of this particular series is to connect with local schools, community centers, and libraries to connect these community centers with speakers who can present on a diverse and wide array of important international issues from our respective world regions. I would encourage you, if you're interested in Russia, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, to come to our website, ceres, ceres.uchicago.edu to find more information, or you can email me at ceres@uchicago.edu if you have any questions about any of our other programming or any other things we have going on either this summer or in the coming fall. Tonight's lecture, Neapolitan Cosmopolitan, Catherine the Great, Odessa, and O Sole Mio, will be presented by Miriam Tripaldi. Miriam is an expert on the composers of the Neapolitan Music School, on diplomatic and cultural relations between Italy and Russia, on Russian literary and musical traditions, on Soviet Russia, and on political relations between Russia and Central Asia from the 16th century to present. She is pursuing a double PhD in music history and theory and Slavic languages and literatures at the University of Chicago, and she's almost at the very end of that pursuit. She has completed the dissertation and she will be defending next week. And in the middle, she's giving this lecture. So she's living her rock star life this week with us. So we are appreciative of that. So her dissertation title is Style, Politics, Opera, Musical Mobility, and the Emergence of the Russian Nation in St. Petersburg, 1762 to 1796. So please, welcome to Miriam Tripaldi. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Esther, and thank you, Liz. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here tonight, and you all. And I really thank Liz Kirchhoff for hosting this event, as well as Esther Peters for being such a wonderful, everything. So like with series, but also, her, she's wonderful. And Matthew Weflen, who also works for series. So thank you very much for being so helpful and organizing this. As you look at the title of the program for tonight's lecture, so again, Catherine the Great, Odessa, and O Sole Mio, I'm sure you are asking yourselves what connects those three. The short answer is the sun and the music, probably. No? But for the long answer, bear with me. O Sole Mio is probably one of the most famous songs throughout the world. Part of what interests me about it is the way O Sole Mio exposes the multicultural roots of Odessa, now in Ukraine, and the way it deepens our understanding of not only of Russian imperial geopolitics, but also of contemporary disputes such as Russia's intervention in Ukraine with the 2014 referendum. And for this, if you have questions, I'll be happy to discuss this, the 2014, this more contemporary stuff, in the Q&A part. My talk touches upon the different characters in a complex story. So Catherine the Great, Catherine II or Catherine the Great, of course, is at the core of the story I'm going to tell you tonight. She became Empress of Russia in 1762 with a coup which saw the assassination of Emperor Peter III, her husband. He was emperor for only 6 months, just enough time to begin organizing things and to get things done. Although there had been 3 other female Russian empresses before Catherine, what makes her so significant or unique is that she was the one who strongly continued the work and beliefs established by Peter the Great, the emperor who founded St. Petersburg in 1703 and opened Russia to Western Europe. So Catherine was influenced and introduced reforms invented then, from the Enlightenment period. She was also one of the longest serving Russian rulers. Catherine gained her throne through a coup. As I said, she killed her husband. Well, she had him killed, she didn't do it, herself. And she was educated and very, very intelligent and charismatic. So Catherine was a very knowledgeable person, as she had read a lot and she asked for advice and liked to learn from others. And among her friends, for example, and advisors, were people like the French philosophers, as well as Emperor Joseph II from the Habsburg Empire. And she was also close to King Ferdinand IV, or at least to the kingdom of, at the time, in the last part of the 18th century, Kingdom of Naples, then later became of Naples and the Two Sicilies. Now, Catherine was also interested in expanding the Russian Empire, especially southward. And this is the key that connects Odessa to O Sole Mio. So Catherine wanted to realize her so-called Greek project. Catherine officially advanced the Greek project as an idea officially, because it already began before the 1780s, in the early, indeed, 1780s, to resolve the Eastern question. So usually historians talk about the Eastern question as something that happened later in the 19th century, but in a way we can actually anticipate in the 18th century the so-called Eastern questions. But this is another, again, this is another topic, if you will. So the Eastern question concerned how the Ottoman Empire might be partitioned between Russia and the Habsburg Empire, which with the aim of the restoration of Constantinople or the Byzantine Empire, so which was lost, after the Ottoman Empire conquered Byzantium, actually. So now, besides representing the ambitions of Catherine the Great's Greek project, intended to, as I said, restore the Byzantine Empire through the conquest of the Turkish territories, Catherine was very much interested in cultivating the arts as well. A key figure at this point in Catherine's geopolitical project was Prince Grigory Potionkin. He was a governor general of New Russia. So New Russia was this new like part of Russia, of the Russian Empire, which was in fact, like which included the southern provinces. Actually, Potionkin was also probably Catherine's secret husband. They probably got married or, like either, but privately, of course, in secret in around 1787. Potionkin was closely working with Catherine to conquer the southern territories as the general in charge of all military expeditions. And Potionkin was also working to realize a dream which he shared with Catherine. So the reconstitution, indeed, of the Byzantine Empire via her Greek project. So this is again a topic, in itself, which is very broad, and but just this to say that Potionkin's diplomatic and strategic activity had been indispensable for Russian military expansion and crucial in the de facto, basically, annexation of the Crimean Khanate already in 1783. So in 1783, on April 8th, with Catherine's blessing, Potionkin intervened to tame internal rebellious groups in the Crimean Khanate, annexing it to Russia. So this was at least the official, reason why they, intervened. On 13 February 1784, with an imperial decree, Catherine officially created the Taurida Oblast, or the Taurida province, which comprised the majority of the Crimean Peninsula and part of the southern Ukraine regions. Now we can see a slide with the Russian acquisitions. So, for example, let's see whether the slide get less blurry. Anyway, so well, I don't know whether you see it well, but so there is the yellow, or at least the yellowish part is how Russia, yes, so Russia in 1762, so when Catherine became empress. So this was how the Russian Empire looked like. Then starting from 1772 and later, the orange part was the acquisition of Poland, or the Polish, like territories. It's also complicated, this also thing. But then, at the bottom we see in green we see the acquisitions, Russian acquisitions from the Ottoman Empire, starting already in 1768, so the first Russo-Turkish War, and then later with the second Russo-Turkish War, 1787-92. So, and Odessa, so we see here on the Black Sea, Odessa. So Odessa was part, and then see, the Ottoman Empire was there. So this is how, again, Russia looked like when Odessa was founded in 1794. So right after these acquisitions, actually. So Catherine was very into this Greek project. So she really believed in reconstituting this, in recreating this, like the Byzantine, like getting the roots of getting back the roots of the Byzantine Empire, restoring this Byzantine Empire, at least reconquering Byzantium. So, for example, Catherine had her son's second male child, Catherine's grandson, named Constantine, after Emperor Constantine the Great, for example, the founder of the Eastern Roman Empire. So he was born, Catherine's son, in 1789. So I'm just giving you the dates just to show you how Catherine was thinking ahead. So he was born in 1789, Catherine's grandson, but she was already thinking of creating. So she was already thinking about this project. In fact, she wanted him to be named Constantine. And she imagined him to be in charge, you know, of the future, like emperor of this new Russia, or this new Byzantine part of Russia. Soon after, for example, Grand Prince Constantine birth, a commemorative medal with the inscription "Back to Byzantium" was coined. So it was a serious, you know, thing. And those present at Catherine's court described the event as part of the Empress Greek project. So people knew that Catherine, you know, was doing that as part of a larger project. So, for example, there was another of Catherine's grandchildren who was named Helen. You know, so all these Greek names, you know. Anyway, so part of Catherine's the Greek project involved the naming or the renaming of territories or cities, substituting their original names with Greek names. So again, while she was conquering these southern provinces or these southern territories, new cities were founded, so like Odessa, for example, and all cities were renamed with Greek names. So giving Greek names to cities reveals a more subtle political goal. In fact, you know, the founding of Odessa in particular, as well as other cities, but Odessa is an important place on the Black Sea, so it's also very, you know, important as an access to the sea. Was also part of Catherine's willingness to display political power to her court and especially to Western Europe. So upon annexing New Russia, so the so-called, you know, to the Russian Empire, rulers and administrators recognized that they needed to populate their lands. You know, so Catherine was like, okay, we need to populate, and her retinues, of course, the land with settlers friendly to the empire and willing to work the land, so to move there actually. So agents were sent abroad to recruit colonists, and Russians made it very easy for most immigrants, I would say, to settle in the Russian Empire, but though used travel documentation to restrict immigration out of the empire. So they really wanted to populate Russia and keep those people. It is important to note that although Russia desperately needed settlers, especially for these new territories, administrators did not practice this attract and hold policy uniformly. So they didn't just, you know, get people from all over. They made separate deals with distinct types of settlers based on their ideal vision of the country's population, and Neapolitans had always been one of their favorite groups of people. You know, Neapolitans were working at Catherine's court, and even before, you know, so like there is a lot, I actually, this is part of my project too, so like all these Neapolitan artists, not only composers, but opera composers, so they were part of this ongoing, you know, mobility of people from Naples to Russia to work, you know, to be employed there. Now, the key here is who was asked to organize the city. So in 1794, at the order of Empress Catherine, Giuseppe de Ribas, a Neapolitan nobleman at the service of both King Ferdinand IV and the Russian Empire, established Odessa. He organized its port, fleet, and trade, and made it an important city for the Black Sea and the Mediterranean as well. So now, just as a way, so we can actually look at the slide with the map of you know, just, it's kind of cartoonish, but we get to see. So here it's actually the Russian Empire around 1897. So it's actually later our time, because Catherine would die in 1796. But then, you know, like, of course, these these territories grew and, you know, were kept, you know, were part of the Russian Empire as well. And Odessa grew as well. So Odessa actually became a very important city, very populated. Many Neapolitan people kept moving from Naples, but also from the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies throughout the 19th century. At least So until 1861, when there was the invasion from Savoy and Garibaldi, you know, like, so they invaded, you know, the kingdom of Two Sicilies. So it became, you know, there was the unification of Italy. But after the migration, this mobility again of people continued, not only from Naples, but also from the southern territories of Italy to Odessa. So Odessa, it's funny because Odessa has always been an interesting place because so if you go to Russia, even today, so like you see this huge, you know, like a script with, you know, in Cyrillic, of course. But at the time, in Odessa, you could see lots of signs in Neapolitan. So it was kind of interesting, you know, to see this city in the middle of the Russian Empire, actually not in the middle, you know, like in the Russian Empire, with the, you almost felt that you were kind of in Naples or in Italy, and a lot was also of the weather, you know, the weather, you know, was on the sea, so it was a sea city. So anyway, there were lots of interesting connections. So now, so let's go back for a moment, as I said, you know, to the city. So like, again, as I said, you know, especially after 1850s, Odessa kept growing in number of people, and also, so the city was a very attractive city, I would say, especially for foreigners. Now, it is in this context that the song O Sole Mio was composed. So in this context of mobility of people going to Odessa, and actually people going to Odessa also, you know, to work, but also as artists. You know, there were like lots of artists invited to, not only to Odessa, of course, to Russia as well, but, you know, Odessa kept this connection with Naples, which was very strong. Now, O Sole Mio, there are lots of legends about O Sole Mio. So O Sole Mio was officially written in 1898 by Edoardo Di Capua, who set to music the text by Giovanni Capurro. Now, Di Capua and Capurro were both Neapolitans. So again, this, you know, and we can see, you know, a slide of both Capurro and then Di Capua. So in 1898, Edoardo Di Capua, he was a musician. So he was at the time with his fathers, so he was a violinist in an orchestra on tour in Odessa. So when then he was on tour, he set to music, as I said, you know, the text by Giovanni Capurro. So now Giovanni Capurro was an interesting figure. He was a journalist and editor of the cultural section of the Neapolitan newspaper Roma, which is, I like to mention it because, first of all, I have friends, you know, who still write, you know, for this Neapolitan newspaper, so it still exists and it's a very good one. But it's also the oldest newspaper founded after the unification of Italy. So it was founded in 1862. So now the music of the song of O Sole Mio thereafter seems to have been inspired by a splendid sunrise over the Black Sea, and not, as you might think, or one might think, by the sun of Naples. So this is the, you know, the trick, but people, scholars and people still don't know. So there is a mystery actually, whether it was really written in Odessa, set to music actually or not. So the song was inspired by the sunrise, you know, probably on the Black Sea, probably not, you know, some scholars say that it was not, it was written before, or, you know, but there is no actual reference in the text to Naples or to the Mediterranean Sea or to the Black Sea, for that matters, you know, in the lyrics. So there is a reference, just the sun, you know, O Sole Mio. Now, the song was then presented, so after, upon Di Capua's return from Odessa, both Di Capua and Capurro decided to enter the song in the most important context of the time, the one organized by the newspaper La Tavola Rotonda, by the publisher Bideri, for the feast of the Madonna di Piedigrotta, which is a feast. It's one of the most, one of the oldest feasts in Naples, which is still today, every year, goes on. And then we can, so now O Sole Mio was presented, so there was at the time a festival, so the festival, the Piedigrotta Festival. So Piedigrotta is actually a part of Naples. I don't know, so if people are familiar with Naples. If not, please go to Naples. It's a beautiful, I love that city, of course. But Piedigrotta is actually in between, it's in so-called, Mergellina. It's almost going toward Posillipo, but it's near the Riviera, so you can see the sea, from above. So there is a church, and there is this feast about Madonna, the Virgin Mary of Piedigrotta. And there was also, again, this festival where that song was presented at the contest the same year, in 1898. Now, in the competition, O Sole Mio ranked second, but, and then we can see a little, so here you can see, it's of course in Italia, so Napoli Bello, and then secondo premio, second prize, O Sole Mio. So indeed, though, as in all competitions, but especially in Piedigrotta, so imagine a very animated and very interesting public interested in those songs. The final verdict was the public's, of course. So, in the father of the same Bideri, the publisher, the one who organized, the contest, wrote, "The 1,000 torches are extinguished before the bright line of dawn. The small church of Piedigrotta plays at mass, and immediately the dance ends. But not the song that spreads throughout the Riviera." So Riviera di Chiaia, Riviera is by the sea, down. "And as the chaos mysteriously came out the world, so among those popular songs, we hear singing the new song that is sung after in all the capital, so capital of music. And he runs throughout the whole Europe. And it goes in all the world." So basically he was talking about, how Sole Mio, so everybody, so it became almost immediately a sort of earworm. So everybody was singing, that song. So then if the birth is a mystery, who is the inventor? Who is the master of such harmonious melodies? This is still, the letter from Bideri's father. No one knows it, nor does he care to know it, so much so that one often loves the work and not the author of it. So this particular letter is actually very telling about, what happened to Capurro and Di Capo, because we all remember, so people who know O Sole Mio, of course, they don't remember, they don't even know, many people don't even know their names and who they were, but the song, remained, alive and continued, to grow. So then the melody started from Piedigrotta, actually because yes, it was probably written in Odessa, but he became famous, he became known at this contest in Piedigrotta in Naples. So in a way, even if it wasn't probably written in looking at the sun from Naples, maybe like on the Black Sea, but still, it was in Naples that after the Di Capo returned, this song became alive even. And O Sole Mio then began to be sung by professional opera singers, especially tenors, and by many other singers. So, in fact, there is a long list of singers that I was thinking of, putting a list of, but I said, okay, it's too much, So if you type O Sole Mio, you see all the performers, and some are even, amazing. in fact, you know, despite the success of the song, the authors Capurro and Di Capua died in poverty, and Bideri, Bideri is the, you know, the publisher, became the owner of the copyright. But there is another part of the story. So I want to tell you, just because because I want to be, you know, for intellectual honesty, because after in 2002 actually, Alfredo Mazzucchi, this other author, was recognized as the musical co-author of O Sole Mio. So probably, you know, Capurro got the text from him, or, you know, he heard actually Di Capua heard the music. So it's kind of it's controversial, but there is the heirs of Alfredo Mazzucchi actually found some documents, some papers, you know, in after he died, and that actually speaks for this co-authorship, at least, of the song. Anyway, so the mystery, you know, keeps growing. So there are like lots of legends or stories, at least, about the story. And now, so the O Sole Mio, because of this, the Mazzucchi's participation in the authorship, O Sole Mio, so the song will be covered, you know, in terms of copyright until 2042, you know, at least in Europe. So now, O Sole Mio opens up another, like, a window into another cultural context, which is about, which regards the 19th century Neapolitan melodic, you know, songs that they were performed everywhere at restaurants. So it was a tradition that began, well, it was also from before, but, you know, in the 19th century there was this thing about singing, you know, at restaurants, and even today, you know, like if you go to Naples, it's a beautiful, it's part of one of the beautiful things of that city. But so later, even later, people in the nobles, or like aristocrats, or other people who could afford to invite musicians, you know, would invite musicians, especially from Naples, as I said, you know, earlier, and especially from, especially in Russia. So this is one of the reasons why Di Capua was touring Odessa in 1898. So they were invited, basically, as many other musicians, to go there and perform. Now, like, one of the, if you know, if the authors disappeared, you know, like their names disappeared, the fame of the song, you know, increased. So, like, for example, there are lots of stories about O Sole Mio, which they're not just about the song in itself, but they open up other interesting views on geopolitics and the connection or interconnection among people. So, for example, in 1920, in August, there were the Olympics in Antwerp. There were all the national teams in the stadium. When it came to Italy, you know, to the Italian anthem, actually, the conductor could not find the score of the Italian anthem. So imagine, you know, in 1920, so we are talking about a particular time in history. So 1920, you know, was fascism, and so it was very, you know, for a conductor to forget, you know, the score, you know, like the music. So what he did then, he signaled to his musicians, and they performed O Sole Mio. So, like, you know, let's substitute it with O Sole Mio. And the whole stadium actually sang it along. So I don't know, I couldn't find any reference to any conductor, like being put into jail, or, you know, being killed or something. So I suppose, you know, they all survived and they were all fine, because, you know, O Sole Mio actually saved, you know, them. Anyway, so O Sole Mio is the celebration of the sun, you know, as we will see in a moment in the text. So so there are like three simple words, you know, O sole mio, like, you know, or like my sun, you know, my sunshine, my sun, and it talks about basically like a sunny day after a tempest. Basically, so so with this simple theme, simple text actually is made possible for, as I said earlier, for many great interpretation of the song. The most important, the most the greatest, I don't know, the greatest interpretation probably still remains the one by Enrico Caruso. But there are, of course, you know, many others. And now we can actually listen to Caruso's interpretation. Yeah, thank you. So it was a bit long, but I really wanted you to listen to the whole song, because we will go back to the text in a moment. And so I wanted you to, you know, at least to get this also change in like of the, you know, going up and raising, and, you know, like so this is again 1916. So imagine like it was so when he first recorded that song, and it's pretty remarkable because if we, if he had recorded it with the the tools that we have today, it would have probably been even more, amazing his voice, come through. Anyway, so there are again, as I said, there are many other lyrical performances of Sole Mio. For example, people know the one by Pavarotti, by Placido Domingo, and more recently like Bocelli, and then there are like other versions by like in English, in German, even in Russian, but there is one actually that you're probably familiar with, that it's interesting in his own way because even Elvis Presley, in the 1960s, like he wrote, his own version of O Sole Mio, which is "It's Now or Never." So the lyrics actually are different. The theme of the song, in a way, it's kind of different. But it's that the meaning of the music, that Elvis, carried on and then made his own music. And actually, we will listen to it in a moment. But I would like you to focus on the beginning of Elvis' performance, where we have the reference to Naples, or to Neapolitan like music, with some almost a mandolin-like quality of of the music, a clear reference to Neapolitan music. And I chose this video because we can see Elvis perform, but on stage. But there is before his performance, he actually asks one of his musicians to sing the original O Sole Mio. So we can actually see the transition from O Sole Mio to Elvis version. So we can play the video.
Thank you, Lily. No.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a, you know, of course it's in Elvis style, so we would all recognize, you know, I think Elvis style, but actually it's, you know, so O Sole Mio is still there, you know, it's almost like a ghostly presence, or, you know, the core of the song is there. So O Sole Mio kept, you know, talking about, you know, being known worldwide and being used in different contexts actually to mean something, you know, something different for each context in which it was used. So, or yeah, was made, you know. So, for example, I don't know, I couldn't find a clip. So, and I'm a bit sad about this, but on 12 April 1961, when Yuri Gagarin went to space, when there was the, you know, when they connected, you know, with him, he was actually singing O Sole Mio. So this is a fact, you know, I'm not making this up, of course. So just to see, you know, just to notice how O Sole Mio actually was even, like, you know, it was even brought to space, you know, by Yuri Gagarin. And it is not an homage to Odessa, I think, but it's because there were like O Sole Mio was also translated and performed, you know, like in Russia. So it was because of other things. So I guess, you know, Gagarin remembered that thing. So, but you know, O Sole Mio went to space. So now let's if we go back to the lyrics of the song, you know, we can actually see now after all these stories around, we can look at the lyrics. So let's see, let's wait for the lyrics to become clear and not blurry. I don't know whether, yes, now I guess you can see them. So just, you know, I have my text, but I want you to see. Yes, perfect now. So again, as I said, you know, it's a simple song, you know, like, so simple in a way that, you know, so che bella cosa una giornata sole. So what a beautiful thing a sunny day is, you know. So like the air is serene after a storm. The air is so fresh that it already feels like a celebration. So it's a celebration of life, a celebration of, you know, like life, you know. So a sunny day, people are happy, and is one of the reasons why people say that, you know, people in the south, especially in southern Italy, are happy and full of life. And I come from there. So and then so if we look at the chorus, you know. But another sun, even more, you know, more beautiful, or my sweetheart, etc., etc. So, as we said, you know, as I said, so this song might have written in Odessa. So probably looking at the sunrise on the Black Sea. Probably Di Capua was thinking of a woman to whom they say was dedicated, a noble woman who, you know, who inspired the song, probably not. So it's a song about sun, about life, about love, you know. But what is interesting here is that, we start from a, you know, from a tone, and then we go up, you know, like, Mana tu sole, più belle te, no? So Sole Mio, no? And then, Mana tu sole, più belle te. So we go up here, no? So Mana tu sole, so but another sun, you know, more beautiful than you. So one can think of like comparing the woman to the sun. So like actually the woman. So you are, you know, like a sun, you know, but you are a sun, a more beautiful sun than the actual sun, you know, or perhaps, or maybe, you know, Di Capua was thinking about the sun he was seeing from, he would have seen, or he would see from Naples, you know. So again, if you even the sunrise, you know, looks beautiful or more beautiful in Naples. You know, I've seen like sunrises, you know, the sunrise from many places, but from Naples is another thing. So you see the volcano, you see the Vesuvio, you see the sea, and you imagine all these legends about, you know, the city in itself. It's a magic place, you know, Naples in itself. So, and perhaps here is imagining the other son, so the son from his own hometown, basically, and then there is also, you know, in the same lyrics, you know, so like going down, you know, there is a sort of turmoil, you know, emotional turmoil, I would say, you know, because he says, you know, "Mana tu sole, più belle," and then he says, you know, "Oh sole mio." So here we, you know, we enter almost like a melancholy or like a sense of a feeling of sadness, you know. So there is almost it's like he's suffering because probably he's remembering or he's thinking of the son. So he's getting nostalgic of the son of his own, you know, of Naples. Again, this is a reading that if the song was written in Naples, probably not, probably in Odessa, as I said. But again, there is no reference to any specific place because in the end, you know, they were looking at the sun from either the Black Sea or from Naples or from any place. In the end, you know, we look at the sun, and the sun is just, you know, it's only one, so it's one entity. So we look at the same thing in a way. So this is just to give you a hint of the, you know, of the lyrics and the beat, you know, of the song. Then, you know, it goes down and talks about, you know, just a simple thing, you know, like that your window panes shine, laundress is singing and boasting about it, and while she's wringing the clothes, hanging them up to dry and singing. So again, there is the reference to a woman, actually, you know, like who is doing simple things, but you can find these simple gestures almost, you know, the sense of life, you know. So yeah, now the song kept actually, you know, traveling in a way. And now I would like to go almost back in time because in even Marcel Proust, you know, so like why Marcel Proust? Well, because Marcel Proust in his In Search of Lost Time, in the sixth book, mentions, so when he was in Venice, he mentions, you know, so like, so he, you know, like the character, you know, mentions there is a reference to actually O Sole Mio. So basically there is a man on a gondola who is singing O Sole Mio on a gondola in Venice. So the boy doesn't want to, you know, to leave. He's just, you know, captured by the song. And let's watch this clip and see how clever, I think, this commercial of Cornetto, this Italian, you know, gelato, is, because, you know, I'll let you see.
Just one cornetto, give it to me, delicious ice cream of Italy, di notte and giochi a dream, give me cornetto, the warm ice cream.
Okay, so of course, you know, it's like Proust adapting the, you know, the song in another context, but I would assure you, if you, so a Napolitan man would never ever steal a gelato from a woman. So this is actually, you know, like how the song was, you know, changed context. Anyway, so yeah, see, just so the commercial, actually, if you see the commercial, it's like, okay, why, you know, a man on a gondola? But actually the reference, I think, is to Proust, the reference of Proust, you know, like on, you know, singing on a gondola. Yeah, just so I wanted to give you a sort of overview how the song traveled, but starting from a historical the historical context, because we again we started from 1794 roughly with Catherine the Great. So when Odessa was founded, within her Greek project, and so it makes sense. Is this Greek name? Actually, it was originally planned to be called Odessus, but then Catherine proposed this female name because she just to almost mark her like her female, her being a woman ruling the empire. So it became Odessa. So it's kind of weird, in a way. Then. Again, the 19th century, but the connection between Russia and the Neapolitan and the Naples, especially the Kingdom of the Sicilies, had always been very, very strong. So imagine, this is on a side note, that in 1787, the first treaties of trade and for the Mediterranean Sea was signed between Catherine the Great and Ferdinand IV. So just to give you a sense of how strong their diplomatic relationships were. And again, there is a lot more to the story here. But then 19th century. So this and then as I said, Deribas was an important figure because if we don't know, probably if another man from another country had founded the city, we might not have had these like many people from Naples and from the the southern part of Italy, who continued actually to move to Odessa through the 19th century. In fact, this the song actually "O Sole Mio" is I think also touches upon another topic, which is the one about migration, because it tells how people, not only the song migrated and keeps migrating and changing and adapting, but also talks about how people carried that song abroad and brought it in different contexts. So for example, it is after in the 1870s, 1880s, migration was a big part of the southern part of Italy, because after the unification of Italy and the destruction of the kingdom of the Sicilies, basically all these people started to migrate because they needed to find job or something, like to work. So many of them moved to the United States. And in fact, there is a huge community of people from, I would say, Italy, but mostly from Naples, as well, or from like the south, broadly speaking. And then Sole Mio was one of the things that they brought with them as part of their cultural heritage, as well as people adapting it in different contexts. So and then O Sole Mio speaks to not only the cultural but also the emotional heritage of people, broadly speaking, and it's about personal relationships, but also historical facts, but also legends and stories, as in all things there are, and then it becomes it is actually a sort an intercultural connector, so it connects all these things over time that still are connected to each other. And I want to close on just a note on this particular moment that we are all experiencing, but also that I think this song, in a way encapsulates well, which is again, so the sunrise. So if we think of the sun, as I was mentioning a bit earlier, so if we look at the sun, we can look at the sun from different places, from different parts of the world, but in the end, we still look at the same sun. So we still look at, we are still united as people. So, and I think if we, if we think of Sole Mio as that's something that stands for going beyond differences and borders, we can see that, culture or like, arts or music can unite people rather than divide them. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. I know we're kind of running to the end of our scheduled time. We do have time, I think, Miriam, if you're available for a few questions, if people have questions.
Of course, all the time you want. Now I feel better, so. we didn't get interrupted, nothing, so far, happened,
Yes.
technology-wise, so like.
If you have a question and you want to put it in the chat box, I think Liz is keeping an eye on the chat box. If you want to raise your hand and ask a question, we can, and actually ask a question, I think we can risk it. Hopefully it won't cause too much upheaval. Does that sound good, Liz? To you?
Yep, that sounds good to me. I am trying to unmute everybody. Let's see if I can successfully do that. It won't let me do it, but it'll let you guys do it now. So you should be able to unmute yourself. So if you want to ask a question, go for it. If you have trouble with it, just raise your hand and I can unmute you one at a time. Did I see Audrey had a question maybe? Audrey and Jared?
No, but thank you very much, Miriam and Esther. I really enjoyed the presentation and the music. I'm an opera lover, so this is really special. And Miriam, I really appreciated your ending message. At times like this, it is a really nice reminder that the sun shines down on all of us. We all see the one. Good luck to you on your presentation as well.
Any other questions? And if anything pops up afterwards, I'm more than happy to send those questions on to you, Miriam.
Miriam, I think you're muted. If you want to unmute yourself.
Okay, now I'm sorry. Maybe it's too much of me, like, just stop talking. Now, yes, Natalia. I think Natalia has a question. I don't know whether, yeah, Natalia, you are muted.
Hello.
Yeah.
Well, oh, yeah. Now I think I'm unmuted. Thank you so much, Miriam, for your presentation. And I would like to ask this question about some possible, maybe Ukrainian influences, because that's what was mentioned in your presentation. And I thought that it was quite interesting that you traced this connection since when Gogol went to Italy, he was comparing actually Italy to Ukraine per se, not to the Russian Empire as a whole. And he was mentioning that in Italy, he felt as if he was back to his town where he was born, which was in Ukraine. So I was wondering if you can possibly trace some maybe connections, maybe some connections with the Ukrainian Cossacks, which actually lived in that territory that was further built into this section, which was called Novorossiya, but actually it was reorganized, right? Not built, not created, but reorganized out of those territories which already existed in the south of Ukraine.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, actually, there were lots of so of course people moved also to Ukraine, also from Naples, from the south of Italy in particular. So and Odessa, as well as other cities on the Black Sea, for example, are, so if you think of the sea, so the cities on the sea, they share lots of similarities. So they share, you know, like how they organize their lives, how they live their lives, how they navigate even, you know, like the world. So for example, not only cities, so and in the south, you know, they also share in a way the weather, you know, so it's kind of similar. So and there were many people actually who moved from southern Italy to Ukraine, you know, those territories in Ukraine. So, and they brought, you know, lots of things, you know, with them. And so there was kind of a mixing of things. And as I said, you know, people from the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies in particular, so again, up to 1861, they were very much welcomed to Russia, broadly speaking, and because there were like lots of also, so they were helped, you know, economically, financially. So they didn't pay taxes, for example. They didn't have, you know, any obligation in the military, for example. So people who moved and who became, you know, Russians, you know, especially in Novorossiya, so like in the New Russia. So they were, you know, people who would look for good fortune, you know, they would just move and find, you know, a new life or a better life, you know, probably. Yeah, but it goes back even before, because if you think, so first of all, the southern part of Russia is, you know, was at some point, you know, belonged to the Ottoman Empire, but before then, you know, belonged to the Byzantine Empire. So if you think all these places, you know, in the south share actually the same culture, broadly speaking, so with the Mediterranean, so with the access to the sea, similar, you know, customs and belief, you know, not beliefs, so but cultural. So there is a sort of similar cultural heritage that connects all of them, I think. I don't know whether I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Oh.
I have a question here from Angelina in the chat. So she says, apologies if I missed it. Were you able to trace any information on how the song was made popular in the Russian Empire?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so actually the song was translated and brought, you know, like to Russia as well. So, and he was, so for example, he was especially in, so became part of the repertory of the songs performed back in Russia, especially like through the beginning of the 20th century. So because, so just the timing, you know, like, so they got back and then became, you know, famous from Italy all over. But then it was performed, but especially by musicians who were invited also to Russia, you know, later. Angelina, I don't know whether. I don't know whether Angelina. Oh.
Is there any last questions or? I know Liz mentioned she could pass on questions to Miriam if you have them later. You could, as I already mentioned, the series email address series@uchicago.edu. I'd be happy to kind of questions as well. So.
I've just added my email into the chat box there. It was also in the information that you guys all looked at when you signed up for for the program. So do feel free to send me an email if you'd like me to pass something on. And it looks like Esther also just put the information for the center in there as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know whether you also have my email there. I think so. Well, if
We can connect if somebody, we can kind of connect if you like. So, but that's easy enough. So, but if there aren't any questions, I want to say thank you to Miriam for a fascinating lecture, and it was fun to hear the music. And I love that gelato commercial. Not just because it makes me want ice cream, but
yeah, it's the right time, I think, you know, not of the day, but of the year, I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you again. We really appreciate it.
Mhm.
Oh.
Thank you. So thank you all.
Yes,
Yeah. So
we can. I don't want to end and kick everybody off if they have a question, but if not, we can. We'll wrap this up. And notice we have been recording, and so we'll do our best to share the video if people want to revisit it at some point. So and
thank
we'll
you.
make sure to
Thank you very
with
much.
Liz. So
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.